Thank you all so much. I won't take long because it's late and it's been a long week. But I just want to say how very moving and powerful this evening is, and how it really speaks, I think, to the incredible opportunity we have, the incredible power we have right within this room. It's really true that we are at, I think, an unprecedented crunch time, certainly in my political life. We're running up against the brick wall in virtually every dimension. Things are very tough, as we've heard from the workers, from the academics, from the students, from healthcare, from housing. We are virtually at a dead end, and our options are running out. We've elected the more liberal of the political parties of our mainstream choices to just about every office in this state. 90% dominant party in the legislature here, all of the statewide offices. And again, at the federal level, we have Congress, we have both houses of Congress, we, meaning the more progressive of the two parties, of the two corporate parties, really hold positions of power. And many people really work their tails off for promises that were made. That power is in the hands now of the dominant corporate party, but we're not moving forward. And in fact, the solutions that are being proposed are very much Trojan horses for even worse than what we've got right now. We have a healthcare reform, which, as was pointed out, brings the Massachusetts miracle to the whole nation. It will create enormous windfall, not only for pharmaceutical companies, because it takes off the table the ability to negotiate, the ability to bring down pharmaceutical prices. That gets promised away. It will be a windfall for health insurance companies because it brings the mandate to millions and millions of people who will be hard-pressed to purchase unaffordable plans that at the end of the day are useless for protecting either health or financial security if you get sick. And a lot of people do get sick. In terms of the environment and the incredible climate crisis that we're facing, we've seen unprecedented rainstorms in the past week. We saw 20 inches in Georgia, and we saw about as much snow that was predicted to fall in Colorado. We've heard this week also that there's unprecedented thinning, not only in the ice at the north, which we're losing about a century ahead of what was predicted only 5 years ago, but we're also now getting thinning down at the other end. All predictions, the worst case scenarios have been exceeded, and we're looking at accelerating warming. But what kind of bill are we getting from Congress? We're getting a bill which is essentially a Trojan horse for big coal, for agribusiness, and for Wall Street. It will create a new derivatives market, as if we didn't have enough fun with our existing derivatives market. We get to have a whole new one on these so-called, whatever they're called, these offsets. Yes, the offsets in the cap and trade, which will be, it will set up a whole institution to preserve cap and trade forever, which will not get us to where we need to go. It is a windfall for coal companies because it enables hundreds of new coal plants to be built, and it disarms the ability of the EPA to regulate coal, which it has right now. And what for? The hype is that it's going to get us, what are they saying, 20% by 2020? Something on that order, but it's complete hogwash because they're talking about, they've changed the baseline in order to tell you that it's going to get us somewhere. The IPCC, which is the International Commission on Climate, has stated the minimum, the absolute minimum requirements, consensus by really virtually any scientist worth their merit around the world, that minimum is expressed in terms of 1990 levels of carbon emissions. So what the current bill, the Waxman-Markey bill, is doing, they're expressing their targets in terms of our current levels, or 2000 levels, and telling us that, oh, they're going to bring those levels way down. But what the IPCC says we have to do if we're going to avoid catastrophic climate change and the meltdown of the ice sheets, Greenland alone could raise sea level by 24 feet. And you know how much of Boston will be underwater if that happens. The minimum requirement to get there means bringing down our CO2 emissions at least 20%, at least 25% over 1990 levels, not over 2000 levels or 2005 levels. So they changed the baseline so that what this bill would accomplish is actually like 1/25th, if you do the numbers. It's 1/25th of what the IPCC says is the minimum essential if we're going to avoid catastrophic change. And we can't wait for about 15 years, which is what this bill will do. It will take about 15 years before there are any reductions. And in the meantime, our emissions are going to skyrocket because it takes the limits off of coal plants. So, you know, we've got these crises on our hands. Or look at, you know, the housing. The housing assistance that's been proposed is not coming through. Families are still losing their homes. And mortgages are still being foreclosed, and it's still 1 out of every 10 American families that is either foreclosed or delinquent on their payments and at risk for becoming foreclosed. So we are not solving problems. We have, you know, this is sort of the age of the scam. We have sort of government by scam, government by public relations. And you know, the writing has been on the wall here for quite some time since money took over politics. And that, too, was another change that happened around the 1970s when the Democrats adopted the fundraising strategies of the Republicans and began to go for big money. So you had both of the mainstream parties becoming corporate and becoming money, driven by money, and really developing the same agenda. Different in the margins, but not reflecting the majority agenda, which is what we're hearing about tonight, the majority agenda. So we've got a crisis on virtually every front. You know, we were going to be stopping the war in Iraq, but what do we have instead? We have a whole new expanding war in Pakistan and Afghanistan. So, you know, at the end of the day, why personally I think this is actually a very exciting moment and a moment of incredible opportunity is because the truth is kind of clear to behold now. We're not going anywhere as individual movements struggling on our own. But you put us together, and we are really the majority with the majority agenda. If you put together the peace movement with the healthcare movement, with the housing movement, with the movement for Main Street instead of Wall Street, which, by the way, is getting $18 trillion. That's essentially what's been put together globally to bail out the banks internationally. It comes to about $18 trillion. That would go an awful long way for healthcare and housing and green jobs and all these win-win solutions that can really get us up and out of this mess. So at the end of the day, there are two take-home lessons. One is that this isn't rocket science. These problems are eminently solvable. How do we deal with the healthcare myth? We implement single payer. In Massachusetts alone, that would free up $9 billion that we can use to cover everybody and improve that coverage. You know, how do we get out of the war in the Middle East? Well, for one thing, we moved to renewable energy. And those good green jobs that Timothy was talking about that could create so much employment. We've got to think about food for all kinds of reasons. For one thing, we're going to have a fuel shortage. And it's not going to be so easy to be shipping food from 1,500 miles away, which is the way it works now. And if you do the numbers on food, it's going to take supposedly about 40 million farmers in the U.S. to meet our food supply. So there's a lot of jobs in food, in sustainable food. There's a lot of jobs in sustainable energy and renewable and healthy manufacturing and green manufacturing. So the jobs are there. That's not a mystery how we get the economy going again. Likewise, there are solutions for the mortgage crisis.